The unfinished letter. By the time you read this, it's too late. He is behind you. Emma's hands trembled as she clutched the old yellowed piece of paper. She had found it in a dusty drawer of the house she had just moved into. A quiet, abandoned home in a town where no one seemed eager to talk about its history. She turned the letter over, hoping to find more, but the back was blank. The ink was faded, yet the words were clear, and the last line sent an icy shiver down her spine. She glanced over her shoulder, nothing. The house was silent except for the occasional creaks of the wooden floor beneath her feet. A storm was brewing outside, the wind howling through the cracks in the windows. Emma swallowed hard and took a deep breath. It's just an old letter, she told herself, probably some prank from the past. But why did it feel like a warning? A house with secrets, Emma had moved into the house for a fresh start. After a bad breakup and losing her job, she needed a place to clear her mind. The rent was cheap, suspiciously cheap, but she hadn't questioned it too much. Now, standing in the dim light of the flickering hallway lamp, she wondered if she had made a mistake. Determined to shake off the unease, she folded the letter and placed it on the kitchen counter. She would look into it later. Right now, she needed sleep. That night, as she lay in bed, a strange noise woke her. A soft scratching sound, like fingernails dragging across a surface. She sat up, heart pounding. The sound was coming from the hallway. Slowly, she got out of bed, gripping her phone like a weapon. She stepped into the hallway, her breath hitching as she listened. Scratch, scratch, scratch. It was coming from the drawer where she had found the letter. A cold chill ran down her spine. The air felt heavier, thick with something unseen. She hesitated before taking slow steps toward the drawer. With trembling hands, she opened it. Empty. A gust of wind rushed through the house, making the doors rattle. Her bedroom door slammed shut behind her. Emma gasped, spinning around. She rushed back to her room, but the door wouldn't budge. It was as if something was holding it shut. Then she heard it. A whisper. A voice too faint to understand, yet unmistakably real, and it was right behind her. The figure in the dark. Emma turned slowly, her heart hammering in her chest. The hallway was dark, but at the far end, just barely visible in the dim light, was a figure. Tall. Still. Watching. Emma's breath caught in her throat. She tried to move, but fear rooted her to the spot. The figure didn't move, but she could feel its gaze piercing through her. She scrambled for the nearest lamp and switched it on. The hallway was empty. Emma's hands shook as she backed away, slamming the bedroom door behind her. She locked it and pressed her back against the wall, trying to calm her racing heart. She barely slept that night. Every time she closed her eyes, she felt like she wasn't alone. The letter's origin. The next morning, Emma decided she needed answers. She went to the local library, hoping to find something, anything, about the house. The librarian, an elderly woman with wary eyes, hesitated when Emma mentioned the address. That house. The librarian lowered her voice. It belonged to the Holloway family. A tragedy, really. What happened? Emma asked, her pulse quickening. The librarian hesitated before pulling out an old newspaper article. The headline sent a chill down Emma's spine. Family of 3 vanishes without a trace, only one clue left behind. Emma's eyes scanned the article. The Holloway family, parents and their young daughter, had disappeared decades ago. The only thing left behind was an unfinished letter found on the kitchen counter. The same letter she had found. The librarian leaned in closer. People say the father went mad. That he saw something in the house. That he tried to warn people before it took them all. Emma's stomach twisted. Before what took them? The librarian shook her head. No one knows, but everyone who has lived there since. She hesitated. They don't stay long. Emma's hands clenched around the newspaper. She had to get out of that house, something in the shadows. That night, Emma packed her bags. She wasn't going to wait for something worse to happen. As she grabbed her things, she heard it again. The whisper. She froze. It was closer this time, a breath on the back of her neck. She spun around and saw it. The figure. It was inches away, its face obscured in darkness. Then, in a voice that sent pure terror through her, it whispered, "You should have left sooner." The lights flickered. The air grew suffocating. Emma stumbled back, heart pounding as the figure advanced. The letter on the counter fluttered to the ground, and for the first time, she saw the rest of the message. If you are reading this, it's too late. He is behind you. Run. Emma didn't hesitate. She bolted for the door, yanking it open and sprinting into the night. As she reached the street, she turned back. The house was completely dark, but in the upstairs window she saw it. A tall shadow watching her, smiling. The escape. Emma never went back for her things. She left town the next morning, never speaking of the house again. But sometimes, late at night, she still hears the whisper. And she knows it's still watching, waiting,